Okay, good evening it is from here in Sweden. Angus Hawkins here from philosophyofreedom.com. And today, evening it is from here in Sweden. I've got a bit of background noise. So we're here to talk about the philosophy of freedom in real life type of thing, aren't we, Tom? Tell us.
Yes, sir. I'm Tom Lass from philosophyofreedom.com. Angus is my sidekick, who's joined up at philosophyofreedom.com to start producing more programming.
And we've decided, although in our study groups, which we all encourage you to go and have a look at some stage as well, we like to look at real world, what's happening in the real world with regards to the question of freedom, a hugely important question. And so we've lined up a couple of articles that we're going to look at today to get us going on the topic. Do you want to line us up with the first one there, Tom? You've got something on the freedom convoys in Canada, haven't you?
Yeah, the title of this discussion is "It's not about left or right, it's about freedom." And we're going to look at some outer freedom starting out and then conclude with inner freedom. Now, a big event that's happening now is the Freedom Convoy movement spreads across the globe. I don't know if you've heard about it because it's been really heavily censored by the authoritarians who tend to censor anything, any kind of a resistance to authoritarian rule. The Canada-inspired Freedom Convoy movement is gaining momentum with trucker demonstrations kicking off in multiple countries. This is something they really fear, that this freedom movement will spread around the world, and it's happening.
Now, and we're also, sorry, go on, Tom.
It's not really about anti-vaccines. It's a movement about freedom of choice to freedom of health choice. And so, what did you want to say?
I was going to say, and it's as you said, it's spreading. There's multiple convoys in Europe, nowhere near the size of Canada at the moment, but multiple convoys that are homing in on Brussels. So if you look at websites that give you information about it, you'll see there's trucks organized going from Italy, Spain, France, Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, and the idea is that all of these lorries, trucks and trailers, that they converge on Brussels as a means of making their voices heard. Because what people are recognizing is that there is one way of thinking according to the media. And if you're not in tune with that particular chosen way of thinking, then you won't find your voice represented in mainstream media or legacy media, or there are loads of different names for what we should call it. Perhaps we should even come to an agreement about what we want to call it here. But people want to have their voices heard because they feel they're not being represented. So it's a very interesting situation. But one of the things we were going to talk about in relation to this, Tom, wasn't it? It's the importance of the fact that left-right politics it's completely changed here, because freedom fighters used to be championed by the left. I mean, that was their bread and butter. And yet here we see something fundamentally different going on, don't we?
Yeah, things have really changed. I mean, I always considered myself a progressive because I was, I guess I always valued freedom, and the progressives were the fighters for freedom.
That's right.
I mean, especially like the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, they would be out in parks fighting for the right of free speech for Nazis. The Nazis would be holding a demonstration in a park somewhere, and the city authorities were trying to run them out of there, and the ACLU would show up to defend their right to free speech. Now, the ACLU has been taken over by the woke crowd, and they oppose individual rights and freedom now. It's ridiculous.
It's interesting that the woke movement, isn't it? Because like yourself, I would have called myself relatively progressive. It's like on the political spectrum, but according to like the new ways of defining people, I mean, most people would end up calling me like just so like slightly left of a Nazi, whereas it's like I'm 50 plus years old. For all of my adult life, for 30 plus years, I've considered myself sort of like a liberal in the European sense. I sort of like it's like somewhere between left and right. And now it's like if I were to express certain views, no, you're not, because anything that isn't according to the mainstream woke view is automatically demonized as far right. Far left doesn't exist anymore because the far lefts have dominated the media spectrum.
What I realized was I really wasn't left or right. I was about freedom. And when one side was for freedom, then I'm on their side. And when the things shift, then I lean to the other side. So it had nothing to do with left and right or progressive or conservative. It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with I'm on the side of freedom.
Yeah, but you and I your thoughts resonate strongly with me, but because the media frames it always in terms of left and right, it's so easy to get sucked into that narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a video from a heavily censored person who appeared on the Candace show. I can't say their name. We can get censored, so I can't say Malone. But here's what he had to say.
This is not, I really think, and we spoke about this earlier, this historic alignment of left versus right is now obsolete. It's, are you for collectivism or are you for freedom to choose? That's the new alignment. And it's not Democrat or Republican. You've got a whole bunch of folks that were traditionally Democrats or centrists even, that are suddenly saying, oh, I get it now. It's about freedom.
It's about freedom. He said, this historic alignment of left versus right is now obsolete. It's, are you for collectivism or are you for freedom to choose? That's the new alignment. It's not Democrat or Republican. You've got a whole bunch of folks who are traditionally Democrats or centrists even, that are suddenly saying, oh, I get it now. It's about freedom.
There is you're reminding me of going back around about a year or so, some Naomi Wolf, it's like a left feminist, a prolific writer with some interesting thoughts. One of the things that she was quite early beginning to recognize that she was, I think the term that she used was, she's got very strange bedfellows now. And what she meant by that is suddenly she's finding herself, so like feminist, far left, so like on the old political spectrum, is able to talk to what would previously have been called right, or even possibly even so like far right people. And what they're unifying around is this idea of it's freedom actually that we're interested in. And I think there are so many areas in if you begin to look at the media of these strange bedfellows where people who traditionally would have been enemies on the political spectrum are now beginning to see eye to eye, and they're unifying and they're saying, it's like, this is an issue about freedom. We need to we need to sort of regroup. We need to redefine like our identities or where our alignments are. And the key polarity for these people is it's freedom that we're interested in, individual freedoms, the right to say the government has no right saying whether I have to do this, that, or the other. It's my body, my choice, to take one common refrain.
Well, the reason we're for freedom is because we're pro-human. In the philosophy of freedom, it says we are human in the fullest sense only insofar as we are free. So if you support the human being, you need to support freedom, because that's how we become fully human, is through our freedom, producing our own ideas, expressing these ideas, turning these ideas into action, into free action. I mean, that's what makes us human. Yeah. So if you're pro-human, you have to be pro-freedom. And this is where the philosophy of freedom, now in anthroposophy, you can say anthroposophy is intended to be non-political, but that's not the case with the philosophy of freedom. Steiner said, the purpose of the philosophy of freedom is to lay the foundation of ethical individualism and of a social and political life. And the reason for that, I mean, the philosophy of freedom is about developing ethics and morality, and it makes freedom very central because that's what makes us human. So politics and social life, a lot of things are based on our morality. And if freedom is a very important moral principle to you because you support human, then that's going to carry over into social and political life. So in that sense, the philosophy of freedom is very involved in the social and political life, which is different than your normal spiritual science or anthroposophy.
Yeah, and it is definitely a theme. I mean, a lot of people will, it's like just as a feeling level, they'll resonate with the idea of I want to be free. But one of the things that we look at, like with the philosophy of freedom in the groups and all the material you've got on your site, is it sounds like a trivial question, but it's like, what does it really mean to be free? And as you dig into it, you realize like there are levels of deepness that really are quite that are profound, and that's what that's what the mission of the philosophy of freedom groups is, and the website is to promote a more complete understanding of what freedom is. How do you go about exercising it? We're not talking politically here. We're talking about as individual human beings, and how that enriches life. I think that's why you and I are doing these broadcasts, and why we go to the groups, why we're contacting people, because we want to grow a community of like-minded people who are really dedicated to making sure freedom isn't eradicated.
Now I went to Twitter just to find some comments on Twitter to talk about. Here's from Kevin Boyd. Now the battle lines are drawn. It's not right or left anymore. It's collectivism versus individual liberty. And David Hernandez says, the real battle in Los Angeles is not left or right. It's collectivism versus individualism. And Email M says, it's been said before, and I am starting to agree, current left-right political paradigm may not fit today's discourse. Seems to me it's more individualism versus collectivism. You either believe in individual rights or you don't. There isn't middle ground. Read some history.
Yeah. Yeah, these are quite amazing times we're living in, to see people having to defend their rights not to have to subject to certain medical treatments, to being able to visit their children in hospitals, and no critical discussion of it in large parts of the media. That is beginning to change. I'm seeing a little bit of change here in Sweden, for example. Somewhat mildly critical stances to lockdowns, to mask wearing, and these type of things, but still a long way from Sweden. It's it's one of these countries held up as the power. I'm trying to think of the word, but it's one of the foremost examples of a free democratic society. We've had what they call it pandemilagen here, which is a law because of the pandemic that's here, which has basically meant that it's a small group of people, within the government, are able to take any decisions they like if they claim it's to do with health and safety. This is Sweden, and basically democracy has been wiped out for the past 18 months here.
Well, going back to the ideas in the philosophy of freedom, as far as why the philosophy of freedom tends to favor individualism over collectivism, the human being does not carry out the decisions or intentions of another being, but his own. There's another pro-human idea. To be human, you carry out your decisions and intentions, not those of someone else. For the world of ideas does not come to expression in a collective of people, but only in human individuals. What appears as the common goal of a collective of people is in reality the result of the will impulses of individual members, usually a few select ones whom the others obey as authorities. I mean, this kind of comes up in the COVID issue. I mean, there's certain authorities that are making all these decisions for the collective, that we must do this, we must do that, you must submit to this, you must submit to that. It's just a few individuals who are making these decisions for the collective. Yeah. And this goes against our individual pro-human nature.
Yeah. I think it would be a lot easier for us to swallow if for people, individualist people interested in freedom, if we genuinely thought there was an open debate looking at all the different aspects of the issue. And this is one of the telltale signs of collectivism, that no, freedom of thought is not tolerated because the truth has already been established. We own the science. Is a motto of collectivism. They really believe they have the whole truth, and a study of the philosophy of freedom, amongst other books, of course, as well. It's makes it plain how ridiculous this idea is, that a small group of people really do have all the answers to these complicated questions.
Any kind of collectivism will always lead to authoritarianism. I mean, it's inevitable, because the collective exists once you put your priority on the collective. The way the collective becomes powerful is through conformity. Everybody obeys, and then you develop a powerful collective. But you also create weak individuals. So the philosophy of freedom is about empowering individuals to be the best and highest they can possibly be, to be the most ethical person they can be. It wants to empower individuals. And in that way, I mean, just think about it. Think of a society where you have the members of society are living to their highest ethical ideals, whatever those may be. They're living to their highest ethical ideals. Now, compared to that's going to make a good society, I would think, because usually in the problems in society is corruption. People get into leadership that do not have very high ethical ideals, and that drags everybody down. So it really, the quality of your society is really going to depend on the ethical value of the individuals in it. So you're going to
And
end up,
those individuals freely unite out of a deeper understanding. They freely unite around these goals rather than being coerced into them by fear mongering or the tools that are being used nowadays to make people encourage people to take certain decisions.
now people that are drawn to a collective tend to, let me read this. Each one of us has it in him to be a free spirit, just as every rosebud is potentially a rose. Now, the view of an ethical individualist is that everyone can achieve their potential and become a free spirit and live to their highest ethical ideals. So that's a particular attitude toward our fellows, to where in a collective that where they feel they need lots of rules, they don't see people like that. They see people as needing to be ordered around, needing laws, needing an authority over them to tell them they need. The individual can't think for themselves. They will come to the wrong conclusions. So we need to tell them what to do, because they're basically stupid. They don't really have respect for the individual. Now take these truckers, for example.
Yeah, I was going to go back there. Yeah.
Or go there then.
No, I was just going to say to begin to wrap this up, because we didn't want it to go on for so long. This is why looking at what the truckers have achieved in Canada is so inspiring. You see people saying, "I'm not happy with the situation, and I'm going to do something about it." Free individuals saying, "We've got to fight for our freedoms, otherwise they'll take away every last shred of human dignity that we've got if we let them. So we have to fight them." Truly inspiring. And again, from a European perspective, it's particularly nice to see people here in Europe are beginning to see the power of what it's changed in what it's changing in Canada. It's already led to Alberta, I believe, today backing down. It's having trade repercussions because of the bridge that's being closed for a couple of days. And people in Europe are also beginning to awaken to this, that we can really have political power. So with a small group of people.
See, it's not the intellectuals that are rebelling, the ones that supposedly know things. It's the truckers who are rebelling. So that, I think that speaks to character. I think you're going to find that a lot of truckers have good character. And this is what's interesting about, and they appear to have courage. They appear to value freedom. They appear to have courage, because you really don't know who the people are with courage until you have a crisis. And the ones with courage stand up, and they run toward the fire. They do something about it. So it's very interesting that it's the truckers who end up standing up.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, all these other people that, for whatever reasons, but it's the truckers who stood up, which is very interesting about human character.
And they've got real political strength, because they're not reliant on the captured areas of the media to promote their message. They're in that sense, they're independent, which is also an obvious prerequisite for being able to exercise your freedom. If you're captured, then it becomes a lot more difficult to do that.
Here's another tweet. It's not left or right. It's those who want to rule and those who want to be free. Libertarianism is about allowing people to have the maximum level of personal freedom without infringing on the freedoms of others. You can lean left or right and still be libertarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's a quote from Orson Welles. The real division is not between conservatives and revolutionaries, but between authoritarians and libertarians. George Orwell.
Yeah. You know where George Orwell used to work?
No.
The BBC. He was a reporter at the BBC. It's where he got sort of like, some people claim that's where he got a lot of his insights about, it's like how it's like the Ministry of Truth, for example, isn't it's like a purely fictitious entity. It's something that's based in something that was already happening back in the 40s. Yeah, prophetic book. Anyway, shall we wrap it up there so that we don't go on too long? You've covered the material that you wanted to, haven't you?
Let's go down to the last slide.
I'm going to check. I'm sorry.
Which is social media is under enormous pressure on censorship by the elites under the guise of hate speech. However, in reality, this is to censor anyone who opposes the official narrative. This is not about left versus right. It's about taking away our freedom of speech by authoritarian elites. But then it has this interesting picture below that tweet where it says, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. This is very important in that you cannot have outer freedom if you don't have inner freedom. I mean, if our minds are programmed, if we're not thinking freely, then we're just going to carry out the ideas that have been implanted in us, and that's not really freedom. So you can't have outer freedom without inner freedom, and that's what the philosophy of freedom really delves into, especially in the first part of the book, where it takes a deep dive into the cognitive processes to become conscious of how we arrive at ideas, and it goes through how to think, study of thinking, a study of perception, a study of conception, a study of forming ideas, because we want to form reality-based ideas, and the limits of knowledge. And so this is a deep dive into developing inner freedom, which then we can have outer freedom.
That's right. That's strengthening from the inside. Because if you don't have that inner strength, it does become a lot more difficult to rebel against the machine when it is as powerful as it is. And then I think that's one of the things that has long attracted. First read the Philosophy of Freedom 30 plus years ago. One of those things that attracted me so strongly to it, the feeling of strength that grows inside you as you work through these ideas in yourself. Yeah.
We have a question. Is AI the airman that Steiner warned us about?
I'm going to give us a one-word answer. Absolutely. But as perhaps a few more words on that is the argument is a lot bigger than that, but you're definitely onto something there. Yeah.
And Dean has the redemption song, Bob Marley.
Okay, don't actually know that song. Perhaps I'll have to look at that. Bob Marley and the Wailers. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to invite everybody to go to philosophyofreedom.com if you're interested in joining a study group. I host 3 study groups during the week at different times. Then it's also a huge resource of the philosophy of freedom to learn more. But we hope to be coming back regularly with these live broadcasts, because our mission is this came from Steiner. There was his mission in his early years, how could the epoch be persuaded to accept the ideas of the philosophy of freedom? And if you would like to join us, if you're interested in this mission, go to the website philosophyofreedom.com, and you can contact me through the contact tab, and we'll see what we can do. We need, we're going to try to crank things up here to get the word about the philosophy of freedom. If anybody wants to help, and come and join us.
I'm gonna think aloud here, Tom. I think natural law health's question is very interesting. One that we won't go into particularly on this forum, but Tom and I are like fully conscious of the fact that you've got the philosophy of freedom as a foundation for coming to terms with what real inner freedom is, and then you've got anthroposophy, which is sort of like, in Steiner's view, it's like a natural evolution of the inner freedom created through the freedom of philosophy. And one of these days, Tom and I are going to have to like address this question of to what extent we want to address sort of like anthroposophical questions. Today, I've just given like a simple yes answer to your question. I would love to go more deeply into that, but this isn't the forum. But there might who knows, something like that might come about in the future. But very interesting questions, highly relevant. But we're going to have to, I'm going to have to just like make do with a yes answer to your question there, natural law.
Well, we're going to start producing more videos, so please subscribe to the Philosophy of Freedom so you can be notified when new videos come out. We've got several in the pipeline right now that are going to be coming out that are going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to doing this again soon.
You're welcome, Natural Health. Okay. See you again soon.